down one panelist, and hopefully he'll be on his way shortly. So this is the, hopefully you're found the right place, this is the future of the franchise panel. And we're going to talk about, after the main series of books are done, maybe not chronologically, but outside of the main series of books, what else can we look forward to from the Wheel of Time? And we have several guests with us today, including a last-minute lineup change. And so we're going to, oh, there's Jason. Okay. So we're going to let each of them introduce themselves and speak about why they are an expert on this topic. First, we'll start with our lineup change, since Harriet was unable to join us because hopefully you won't all get up late, but she's actually doing the signing with Brandon down the hall, so you should have time maybe to do both, but if you divide and conquer. But so as a very adequate fill-in for Harriet, which is big shoes to fill, we have Larry Mondragon and am I saying it right?
It's
Close.
pronounced lowly. That works.
All right. Can you introduce yourself and tell people why you are an expert on this topic?
Sure. Back in 2002, I first started working on a project that I really didn't know much about. And it kind of fell into my lap. And it was an opportunity to develop a film project for the Wheel of Time. I'm a semi-literate sci-fi fan. I wasn't at the time a big fantasy fan. And surprisingly, I really had never heard of the Wheel of Time.
Boo hiss.
Surprise. And a wonderful thing happened to me at that time. And I was able to take basically a new career direction. I've been a practicing lawyer for many, many years, working in technology, and was able to really move out of things that I had done for a long time and really pursue a passion. And I have been on that pursuit now. The years have kind of flown by. But I'm in the business of doing two things right now, and that's producing a feature film in partnership with Universal Pictures based upon our beloved Wheel of Time series. And I'm also starting up a video game company to develop a family of video games, also based on the Wheel of Time. It's kind of funny, as I began to really immerse myself in the series, I could see all the connections. My last name is Mondragon, but everybody always calls me Mondragon, and only Dragon. And my middle name is Alan, or Alan. So the connection is interesting. And it didn't take long before some of the people on the various boards were starting to make that connection too. And I've been really fortunate. Probably no such pursuit has ever begun with the type of tight-knit fan community that exists within the Wheel of Time. And the resources are tremendous. And I've been really, really lucky to make the acquaintance and really be able to draw upon the support and experience and insight that Melissa Craib and Jason Denzel have been able to bring to both our projects. So with that, I'll leave my introduction.
No, that's great. And so, great lead-in. Melissa Craib and Dombrowski, I'm going to call you both your names.
That's fine, they're both my names.
Yep, so please introduce yourselves and speak about your part in this project.
Sure. I run tarpalon.net, and I also have helped with the comic book series that came out, and I am working with Larry on the video game aspect of this. That's pretty much it.
Well, Melissa is our online community director. One of the things that we recognize is that with this vast online community, one of the things we did not want to do is go off and try to design a game and then take it out and just find it and miss the mark. One of the things we really want to do, and I try to do myself, is keep our eyes on the audience. Listen to what's going on in the forum, listen to ideas, suggestions, and at the appropriate time, we'd like to conduct some alpha, beta testing. We want to get as many people to provide as much input and guidance so that when we build a game, it'll be one that people really know and want to buy and play.
I'm your token fan. I infiltrated so that they don't screw it up. So you got somebody on the inside.
And Jason.
Yeah, my name is Jason Denzel. I'm the webmaster of DragonMount.com. I've been involved in the Wheel of Time through DragonMount since 1998, and right off the bat, I because of Dragon's popularity, and it was right about that time that all the a lot of merchandising was beginning with the series, and a lot of product tie-ins, and so in order to market to all you wonderful people, they went through Dragonmount and through other sites, but largely they went through us to get feedback and to promote the products and stuff, and that nicely translated to they would send me a lot of free stuff to look at. But then what happens that I found that this was perhaps there were a card game for a while. There were certainly other products. There were the jewelry products that are on sale at the Dolly and everything. And I would start providing feedback. At first, a little unsolicited, but I'd be, hey, this is really great, but people might like it better if you X, Y, Z. And then so over the years, I think I established a reputation as, hey, this is really great. This guy will give you feedback and tell you what the fans really want, and they seem to respond well to that. And then so became involved in a couple. The movie rights to The Wheel of Time have been through several hands before landing in Red Eagle's lap, and I was involved in all those efforts. And I don't know if I've even told you this later, but you know how many times with different producers I've had the conversation about like who should do the opening voiceover for The Eye of the World, and with 3 or several different producers, and we have the best names. And but in terms of this particular for the film project, and I'm involved a little bit in the game stuff, just kind of mostly at a news level. I get updates from Larry, kind of report on things, and loosely involved. I'm a little more deeply involved in the process of the Eye of the World movie, the Wheel of Time movie, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit here. In addition to running Dragonmount as a hobby, my other hobby is I'm an independent filmmaker. So I've got that perspective on that is helpful in this sort of adaptation. I have done mostly short films, won some awards for them along the way. Most recently, I shot a fantasy film, large special effects, that sort of thing. Not finished yet, but you can see a lot of it on various websites and stuff. If you go to jasondenzel.com, there's links to things like that. So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention, because I know it's on the little agenda, obviously we're not going to get to it without Harriet or Brendan here, but I can probably speak just a little bit about the Outriggers and the other books beyond. Obviously they are the authority, and there's not a whole lot to tell, but probably talk a little bit about it based on what they have told me and has already been said.
I totally need to work on my introductions page.
So we are going to make sure that we have preserve lots of time for Q&A, but to set the stage, we're going to give an opportunity to kind of feature why each of them are here. So Larry, I'm wondering if you can tell us just a little bit about the progress that you've made so far, and where you see things going in the near and maybe distant future.
Okay, let me break it up into 2 pieces. First, I can give you an overview of where we are in games. The game company, in fact, both projects, disappointed to say we're behind where I was hoping we would be when I spoke at this event last year. That being said, some of the progress we've made has been important, mostly behind the scenes. We're putting together a game company from scratch. What we decided we did not want to do is simply take a set of rights and license them to somebody else. We want to have, with both the projects, the passion in which we approach this. We want this thing to be done right. We want it to be done first class. And so we spent a lot of time building a company from the ground up. We've entered into a worldwide retail distribution agreement with Electronic Arts to distribute our games in all countries, all major countries in the world. We brought on board as a story advisor in our games a Hollywood screenwriter, Chris Morgan, who's better known from some of his works like Fast and Furious or Wanted, but believe me, he has real real-time chops. He's read the entire series, and he has an appreciation for the nuances of each character in a way that is a tremendous asset to our ability to really bring these characters out in video games. Recognizing that building a company organically takes a long time, we're complementing an in-house team that we're working to assemble with an experienced third-party developer, Seed Entertainment, who we've entered into a partnership with. You may know Obsidian. They've developed fantastic role-playing games, such as Knights of the Old Realm, based on Star Wars, Neverwinter Nights of the Republic, thank you. Neverwinter Nights. They just Fallout New Vegas, and their newest game, Alpha Protocol, just was unveiled at Las Vegas. They specialize in role-playing action games. And,
If you haven't played Fallout 3, you totally should. It's so awesome.
So, again, we're building everything from the ground up. We're also going to self-publish our games, so as opposed to turning them over to an Activision or an EA, we're going to be using EA for distribution, but we're going to be responsible for advertising, marketing, ultimately getting the word out to the public.
What's the style of the game?
We're still in the process of design. One of the things that it's kind of caused us a lot of fatherly last year is that the whole business of video games has really been changing right before our eyes. Costs of video games has been, I can talk more about the business, I won't go too far into it, but just to say that the demographics of who plays games is becoming broader. Game playing is becoming more social. New methods of delivery of digital downloads are becoming more predominant. There's less price inelasticity. People are more price sensitive. So paying $60 for a top premium game, you're finding fewer people at that price point who will buy. And so one of the things that is necessary, as Harriet talked about yesterday, as I sat through her talk on editing, is that she's really at the intersection between art and business. Brandon wants to write what his heart tells him he should write. It's up to the editor, basically, the publisher, to basically say, okay, where does that passion and that work of creative endeavor translate into a business opportunity? Because there's cost in getting a product out to the shelf. And the same thing with the video game business. Games right now, top premium games, easily go between 20 to 35 and $40 million to produce. You add on top of that another $7 to $10 million to advertise and promote. So it's the cost of a middling theatrical release for a movie. And so one of the things that's important to us to do right now is to take stock of these changes in the game business, much of which has happened over the past 18 to 24 months, and make sure that our design fits with where the trends are going.
Is it safe to say, Larry, that you do not intend to simply make a video game based on a movie of real time that gets turned on?
Let me address that. The thing that we are absolutely, one of the two things. We want to benefit from the movie and its publicity. What we hope will happen with the movie is that we'll find our family growing greatly. If we do it well, we'll find events like this, tremendously increase in size. So we want to take advantage of that, but at the same time, one of the things we want to absolutely avoid is this litany of horror stories about, cheaply made, shoddy video games that come out and parrot the movie in a very poor way. One of the things that we've done that is rather unique in Hollywood is that we succeeded in partitioning off all the video game rights before we began our discussions with Universal. Typically what will happen is that a studio will basically buy a franchise, like Harry Potter, and they'll put a project in development. And with a first film, what you'll find is that no game company wants to begin spending money until a project is well along in production. And so what will happen is the studio and the game company really won't come together until very late in the product release cycle for the film. And so the studio the game company may have 18, maybe 24 months at the outside to try to, from the ground up, develop, design, and deliver a quality game on the market. Not surprisingly, corners are cut, quality suffers, and a very one-dimensional game experience emerges. What we've decided to do, and did successfully, is we partitioned these rights out from our movie rights, and we're separately pursuing them independent of the movie. And our whole goal of delivering an experience that is quite unlike the movie, that will reach a level of quality that few movie-based games ever can aspire to. So, long answer to your question.
Yeah, I guess I was more interested in a simple question. Is it going to be MMORPG, or is it going to be just
First game, probably would be a standalone action RPG. Think Xbox, PlayStation, PC, and perhaps not the Wii initially.
Yes?
Yes, and with the PC platform, would you consider Linux support?
What's that? Linux support? Probably not initially. Probably, I would guess a Windows-based game. And one of the things that we're exploring now, both on the movie and games, is the impact of 3D technologies. And it's one of the areas we're very interested in pursuing as well. But right now, we're...
Bad neighbors.
Well, let me set real expectations realistically. Right now, we began some initial design work, and we basically trenched on that, because right now we're still putting together the company. We've got some major discussions underway. Hopefully there'll be some significant announcements upcoming in the next 3 to 6 months that will put the last pieces together. So I would probably not expect first games to be available for perhaps another 2 to 3 years. So we're talking about a long process. I would hope, though, that as early as 12 months from now, hopefully at this next year, we'll be able to show some initial art and unveil a lot more about the design directions than I can talk about right now.
So I thought about it. Go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, basically what I was saying is that with a lot of PC games, that's one thing that I find lacking and it kind of bothers me is not really support. Because I've seen some great results with some open source projects using OpenGL and really did really good on PC hardware that way.
That's a great point. And as a Linux geek myself, I hear you, I'm with you there. I think two thoughts on it. First of all, the reality is that if you're going to make a mainstream video game that it's a big budget, as Larry said, could be as expensive as a mid-list Hollywood movie. We're talking millions of dollars to invest. They need to recoup that investment. That's the nature of the beast, and that's not something that anyone's gonna have to change, unless it were something like a little handcrafted iPhone app or something like that. But if they're the interest right now from Red Eagle and the studio is to make a bigger budget game, and to do that, they need to make their money back in there. So that's why they're going to go Xbox, PlayStation 3, PC. If those platforms are successful, very successful, then yes, absolutely, as most places go and do, they'll probably they'll port it on over to Linux or the Mac and so on and so forth. Another thing that hasn't really been talked about a lot today is that besides just the big action role-playing adventure initially, there is, I believe, a vision for other styles of games. Maybe the MMO that someone over here mentioned, perhaps eventually, and then other more casual games that maybe you just download on WiiWare or whatever, and or to your iPhone app. So there's a whole wide range of things that would be looked at. The other thing is to keep in mind, and probably the most important message that I would think to take away from right now about the video games is that Larry made a really important key point that they're not just relicensing this to someone else and saying, go have fun with this. They went out and developed it and found it. And frankly, I had heard that at one point, a couple months back, that they were talking game studios. I'm like, oh God, who are they going to find? And then when they found Obsidian, it's like, really? Like the Obsidian? Like Obsidian makes some really good RPGs. Have you guys
I
played
was
them?
overjoyed with
Yeah, I mean, have any of you guys played Neverwinter Nights or Knights of the Old Republic? Yeah, it's good stuff. And those are great role-playing games. And so the idea is that those guys have proven that they know how to do this stuff. Let them tell us how to make a really good role-playing game where Red Eagle is involved. In being involved is to making sure that they don't go too far off the path of what is the heart and soul of the Wheel of Time, and that it is consistent with the books and with the movie franchise and everything else. And that's their role, is to sit back and on the flip side to make sure that the movie isn't too far off from the books and then from the video games, and that we have a cohesive.
You want to keep it canon.
Yeah. Well, keep it canon, but keep it feeling like the Wheel of Time across all products, so that we don't have on one hand people making purple plush Trolloc dolls, which were really made. Yeah. And then, I'm not kidding.
I love Narg. I won't do Narg.
No, I'm pretty sure I'm open drag model those, but the point is that going out and finding people you can trust to make a quality product while being involved to a point where you're a guiding hand, keeping things in line from both a business perspective and maintaining the integrity of the franchise. Because we all know that keeping the franchise healthy, keeping the fans happy or whatever, gives you opportunity to continue to make products, and that makes the business people, the bean counters happy, right? There's a question back there.
So I don't understand if this was an Eye of the World game, or is it a more general Randland game, or like you can create a character from scratch, or is it
All those creative decisions haven't quite been found yet, but I do know that Red Eagle has the rights to the Wheel of Time, and so I'm certain that I don't want to speak for you, Larry, but I think the vision extends beyond just simply Eye of the World. That also extends true for the movie, but I think we all would like to see perhaps the movie focused on the beginning of the story, which would be the other one. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, we've looked at a lot of different formats, without giving away anything. We've talked about things as varied as the acid ice testing through the triangle, something along the lines of what my Nate went through. We've looked at formats that figured focusing just on the bad guys, the Forsaken, and their battle to become the one and only chosen one, at least. And so there's a lot of different ideas that we've had. Safe to say we've not focused and locked in on any one yet, but Wheel of Time presents unbelievably immense creative canvas upon which we can pick and choose some wonderful formats for games.
You said last year, I know obviously, like you said several times, that you had nothing hard down, but you said one of the main concepts you were throwing around for the MMO was Age of Legends MMO. That was one of the concepts that you wanted to see, some sort of like age progression MMO. I was just wondering if you have any other further concepts on it.
No, that's still kind of my favorite idea, is to rather than have a MMO that's locked into a single layer, have one that can allow progression, because there's so many wonderful time slices that one can take and one can immerse themselves in. Arthur Hawkwing's Day, or the War of the Shadow, or you just pick it. And so the idea would be to try to see if we couldn't come up with a method of allowing some sort of age progression through a player's ability to migrate at different time frames within the game. So again, the whole MMO business itself is changing. Games are becoming more free to play with subscription models. They're becoming just as important to have social elements and competitive elements, and probably more so because of the gestation cycle for an MMO, which is traditionally, it can be between 4, which is generally a pretty shoddy game, to 7 and 8 years in development. You find yourself, it's like a hunter, seeing a flock of ducks. I'm having to shoot here when I can see them way back on the horizon. And so, because of that time cycle to develop, I need to make sure that we make very thoughtful, careful, considerate choices in the design point for the game. I can maybe for a moment give a quick update on the motion picture. That has been quite the project. We've taken a couple of different tasks and originally we had taken the tact of bringing the director on board and trying to put together 2 basic ways to make a movie in Hollywood. One is to try to assemble a package and sell it to a studio. Bundle of rights, bring a director on, a writer. And for this project, we thought we needed to have a visual interpretation of the Wheel of Time world to present to a studio. So we brought a production designer on, a concept artist, and we brought an excellent director on who had done one of the highest grossing fantasy films at the time, maybe the highest grossing fantasy film of all time. And we began discussions with Warner Brothers, and a lot of business interests that the director and the studio had began to surface that we became concerned would not make the Wheel of Time the front burner project. There was another major franchise installment. The director was being tagged in the film, and he had some other pet projects. And the Wheel of Time was kind of in a bundle, in my view, the jewel among a lot of lumps of coal. And it wasn't getting the care and attention that it really deserved. And probably the most difficult decision that any producer would have to make. A couple of years ago, we basically decided that this wasn't going to work out for us. And we did all those relationships. And then we were back, my partner and I, Rick Selvich, back on the street, you know, a set of rights in hand, but without a home. We were very fortunate that the light saw fit to kind of show us a new direction, and we got into some discussions with executives at Universal Pictures, and wonderful. The executive knows the way. He's read the books. He's a big fan. Unlike the people we're talking to at Warner Brothers, the other studio, shouldn't have named whose initials are WB. The executive at Universal Pictures really was a fan of the series, and you could tell with the passion that he spoke and he talked. That took us into, and it seems like this all happened fast. I am, believe it or not, my character is I'm an impatient guy, a very impatient guy. And it's just been eating me up how long all these things take. Why can't this thing be done yesterday? And so
I think it's good to know, I mean, how long did it take before even Lord of the Rings was optioned? You know,
well,
they've been working on that for a decade or more to try and get
well, initially, I mean, the thing was, Tolkien looked at a lot of scripts in his lifetime, thought they were all horrible, and never thought the materials. In '67, he came into circumstances where he really needed the money, and so he entered into an agreement, I think it was MGM, this was UA, United Artists, to license his franchise for film development. 10 years later, nothing had happened. The rights kind of reverted back and fell into the hands of a gentleman named Saul Sans, who then licensed them for a couple of animation projects, much to everybody's regret. They were absolute disasters. And it wasn't until, I think, '97 where they fell into Peter Jackson's hands. Jackson had worked, I think, about full 8 years
trying to push that project.
to get the rights and then to develop the project. So it is to do a top, and we're not talking about a, you know, $50 million direct-to-video project. We're talking about a, you know, $100 to $150 million, probably more in the final analysis, you know, theatrical release that would be of you know, the highest quality possible. And so our discussion with Universal.
Someone has to take over Harry Potter when that goes away.
Somebody does. And so, you know, it took about, up to a year to get the agreement in place with Universal, and then unfortunately, they decided they didn't like the writers that we had brought on board, or the production designers, so we ended up having to unnegotiate deals we had done, which involves checks being written and dealing with agents and managers and lawyers, and every step of the way, you've got your agents, managers, and lawyers, and I'm sure Brandon will tell you about what he deals with on the literary side. And it just takes forever. So we untied all these knots. The studio ended up writing some checks out. We ended up taking some financial hits. But we ended up with a clean slate that allowed the project to be started afresh at Universal. Then we ended up with a disaster event last year. The studio changes hands. As you know, General Electric sells out its interest to Comcast, buys in. It caused an unbelievable trickle down of where's all the dollars being spent, and why are all these disastrous films being released by the studio, who had a horrible year last year. And it ended up all kinds of projects got cut. And to our credit, with the Time Project, you know, we were one of the big projects that didn't get cut. It's still there, and they are big believers in it. It's a perfect home. Not only do they really know the Wheel of Time, but they really need a big franchise. You know, they you know, Born Identity series has kind of run its course, and that Dana's ready to move on. You know, they've tried the Hulk and Hellboy, but this is a really good fit for them. And
I'll tell you, Larry, though, when we started this, I was young enough to play Elaine. And by the time this is done, I'm going to have to lobby for cat sword. I'm in Morgan's stage right now. Yeah.
Let me ask. Let's do a quick poll. Let's be honest here for a minute. Who here is skeptical about a successful Wheel of Time movie being made? I'll be honest too. So and you know what? And you all have the right to do that because that is absolutely the truth. It's a big book. It's a big series. And we all know, frankly, how Hollywood tends to, not do so well. It's hard on adaptations. Now, that said, so there's a big challenge here, okay? That said, and I promise you, I said this last year and I mean it too this year, there has been no bigger, healthy skeptic, bigger, healthy skeptic than me.
He's a really big skeptic.
I'm a big skeptic on this. But I am convinced legitimately, and believe me, we've had our go-arounds, that these guys, that Red Eagle, and I sincerely mean this, as a fan like you guys, that these guys have the best interests of the books and the series at heart, okay? And I
think they could have made a crappy film by now.
They could have made a crappy film, but Universal, to their credit, it's true. I mean, the executives and the people involved there, they are big fans, and I have not met them in person. Brandon has, and he agrees. These guys know their stuff. They could probably walk around JordanCon, hide out in the back. They might even be here. I don't even know what they look like. And hold their own at Matt's Looney Theory, panel in the other room. Right?
Come on.
We'll put them through. We'll ask them. But point is that Red Eagle legitimately has an interest in seeing this succeed, not just from a business point of view, but from an artistic point of view. And Universal is listening right now. Actually, their contract, they're based on their contract. They have to listen, but that's not the point too. But still, they're listening. And they're
not going to reset it.
There have been healthy discussions, creative discussions about, hey, well, what do we do about this? Certainly, big ideas have been thrown out, and you kind of go, oh, God. But by and large, this is going in the right direction. And if you really think about The Eye of the World, like think about just the first book or whatever, it is like classic Joseph Campbell hero's journey through beginning, middle, and end, young farm boy, and all this stuff. The stuff that Hollywood classic stuff is made of. And successful Hollywood films, if you think of all of the most successful films, probably the ones that you kind of love the most, are ones that blend a mix of, regardless of the era that they were made in, all the way back, Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, movies that successfully blend cutting-edge technology with really good storytelling or melodrama are the ones that are just box office gold. And an artistic gold. You got your, whether or not you like it or not, Titanic and Avatar and Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz and everything in between. Star Wars, certainly. These are movies that combine those two. And let me tell you, there is certainly an interest in doing everything cutting edge technological. I mean, imagine 3D. You're sitting there, if you're watching a 3D film, and you've got weaves of the 5 powers flying in and out of you or whatever. You got channeling, you got people being gentle, severed, and the Sidar versus Sidene, and just the true power and all that. All this can be present in the first movie, of course,
And it's beautiful world building, which lends itself. And if you can get the first film out, well, I mean, Star Wars has proven that they will continue to put money in, even if it's crap.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, but all that's great, but we know, and the studio knows, that this is a character-driven drama. And that's what it is.
And a fantasy series that has strong women characters, which frankly
that's
is something that has
that's great.
Desperately
There will be
underrepresented in
there will be more than 2 women in this franchise,
And they're not being rescued.
Exactly. The studio recognizes this stuff.
But
they're on board.
Well, maybe it'd be helpful too, because I can talk all day on business aspects. Let's talk a bit about creative aspects of the picture. I think that's what maybe most of the people really want to hear about. We're beginning the creative dialogue with the studio, and I can tell you what my desires are. what I want to see in this picture. And there's a lot of arm wrestling and ahead, but I've got some pretty firm, fixed views on what I want to see in this picture. Jason put his finger on it. You know, if you ask everybody in this room, what is the eye of the world? 2 or 3 sentences. You can probably get a lot of different answers. In my view, it's not a story about events. It's a story about characters. It's a story about 5 young people who have, you know, kind of a humble but happy life, and they kind of see their lives ahead of them. You know, Rand is going to get married to a queen, and they're going to be happy and live for the rest of their lives with their families and friends in the 2 rivers. And all of a sudden, they're jerked out of this comfort zone, and they're taken on a journey by somebody who they only halfway trust, past the point of no return, where they undergo an experience, a transformation. They learn about this journey of self-discovery, about who they really are, and some of those answers are terrifying. Parent confronts a terrifying reality of this feral nature inside him. Matt confronts not only the past life he's channeling, but you know, who he's becoming under this the spell of this dagger. Only Egwene is excited by the spark of being able to touch the one power that she discovers within her. Although when she leaves, you know, she's excited to get out of Dodge, but immediately she becomes, you know, almost fearful about what she's gotten herself into. Each of these characters undertakes a journey of immense transformation, and at the end, they only are beginning to come to grips with the fact that in order to achieve some greater good, they need to embrace these inner talents and strengths and really accept who they truly are. That's really the journey that I think that an audience can really come to love, because, you know, like it or not, 99% of the people in the seats in that theater have never heard of Robert Jordan or The Wheel of Time. And my goal is to make converts, to bring new people into the film. And that can't happen if they don't understand the characters. And there's a few examples. You know, one of the characters that I just wanted to see die off as soon as possible when I read the first book was Nynaeve. What an annoying character! And I am absolutely certain that portrayed in the way, because an author has the ability, particularly with a multi-volume series, to do so much more than you can in a 2-hour movie. Because the audience only sees that one episode. And the reason is that, very simple when you think about it, is that The Eye of the World is predominantly a Rand point of view tale. And so, of course, when you're seeing somebody's actions from a third-party point of view, it's easy to say, okay, that is just an annoying person I want to have no part of. But when you see Nynaeve through her eyes, about how she feels she's not being accorded the respect that she really deserves, and about why she gets frustrated, and about what she really wants to do, you have a completely different appraisal of her actions. And so one of the things that you can do in film is to change points of view and bring out characters in a way that the audience can get a better understanding of and hopefully bond with. My belief is that the characters, you know, the main 5 characters, are so varied in their predicaments, their personalities, and their aspirations and fears, that somebody in the audience will find among those 5, maybe one, at least one, that they really can relate to. You know, Matt as well, a bit of a challenge, because Matt is my favorite character, I think, by far in the series. But, you know, he touches that dagger and, you know, he's a golem for the rest of the story. He's kind of this nasty, you know, I wouldn't want to be around him either. He's, you know, spluttering negative things, muttering against the wall, and lying in his bed, curled up. And so bringing out his personality, even though he's overcome by the spell of the dagger, in a way that gives him a little bit more character that the audience can relate to. There's another one of the challenges of bringing a character, lifting him from the pages of a black and white novel into a feature film. Now, you've heard it here first. Don't be surprised that there are going to have to be things that we cut out, things that we compress, and maybe some things that we need to add in order to tell the story. But at the end of the day, my goal is that the characters be those characters that each of us know and love. That the major events stay true to the course of the novel, and that the light sees fit that if we find ourselves with a successful movie, that we will have appropriately done the homework to find points of continuity, where if we are lucky enough to be able to do a sequel, that we will not broke into threads that bring our characters and the key events into the next stage of their journey. So right now we're going through the most difficult process. I've always said that and I've got the studio to agree, that the wrong move was to bring a writer in and then have them just go off, for 30, 60 days and at great expense and bring a screenplay. It's not possible, and it would be a disaster. And so the most difficult piece of work we're doing right now, and that's framing an outline of what story we want to tell. So that's the essence of what we're doing right now. It's who are the characters I want to focus on? What is their journey? What tribulations and trials and fears would they have? How do they grow? What if all these events that are outlined in The Eye of the World really are important to their transformation as a character? And where are they at the end of the book? How do we have a climax true to the events of the novel, but that provides a sense of closure to the audience, and at the same time, a sense of invitation that there's more to the story still to come. And if you give us the opportunity, we've got unbelievable epic to continue. So that's the most difficult part of this project, and that's exactly where our attention is focused like a laser beam right now.
One of the coolest things about being involved in that aspect of it is that I get to ask Brandon, hey, is there anything in the last book that we need to plant in the first movies?
I'll tell you.
We really have to know, Brandon.
I read an outline for it a few days ago, and it was good. It was good. There were some things that were different, and there were some things that were compressed, and some things were added, but I looked at it, and I did not intend to like it. I expected I was going to be disappointed at first, and I just kept going, well, or, oh, that's a really clever way to, oh, yeah. So, I mean,
For example?
well, how the character in Lord of the Rings, Arwen, was used, and how she took over the part of picking up Frodo. Yes, the purists were not happy with that. But the fact is, in that story, the character, God, what is his name?
Glorfindel.
Thank you, Glorfindel. That's a whole back history and another character to introduce, and she very neatly solved the problem. And that was the kind of solutions that I was reading. So,
and there's some things that, personally, I'd like to, and actually the studio as well, my working window, we'd like to introduce a bit more than was in the first novel. A little bit more about the Aes Sedai culture, for example, which is, you really don't know much about it, and there's an opportunity there for a completely blank slate audience who really doesn't know much about anything about the League of Time. To provide a little bit of an introduction about the Ajahs and Tarvalon, because for the first 2/3 of the story, it's like it's a journey. It's a journey for Sanctuary in Tarvalon, and let's move to Tarvalon because that's where we find protection and Sanctuary. And then all of a sudden, it's throw all that out. We're going down on a quest to the Eye of the World, and I think it's important to establish Tarvalon for what it is. And it's a seat of power. It's a seat of intrigue. It's a seat of perhaps the seat of backstabbing and political infighting, and I think it's important, to make the story work. In the novel, my view was that in the first 5 minutes when Moraine walked on stage in the story, you knew she was a force of goodness. And try as Robert Jordan might, it was her efforts to kind of act out as Aeneas Sedai really never overshadowed the fact that she was there as the protector of these young people. And that attitude, though, makes a lot of the conduct of our main characters seem a little irrational. Why didn't they share with her their dreams? And why did they not follow her warnings? And so to make a movie work, heightening a little bit more suspicion over Morena motives, keeping the audience a little bit, giving them that seed of doubt about whether she truly has their interests at heart, or maybe there's some larger web that she is weaving with them as a part of it, can create much more of a reasonableness about why certain things aren't shared and why certain actions are undertaken through the eyes of our characters. So, that's one of the things that we're looking at too. Yes.
One of the things that you're talking about, cutting, condensing, and adding. One of the things a lot of people that start reading the series have a problem understanding is the prologue of the first book. And one of the things that you had said last year that you wanted to focus on mostly, well, not focus on mostly, but that you felt needed to be represented strongly is the prologue of the book, to see how far they came from the Age of Legends to this shambles of a man in a broken tower surrounded by his dead family. In the movie, would that be something that's going to be, that you want to see?
Great question. One of the things that really was a key part of my pitch to the Universal Home of Soul project. Now, by the way, a lot of political shuffling in the last year. Business point. The executive that we pitched the project to was the head of production, and now she has been promoted. She's now the vice chairman of the studio. And the gentleman who's basically the lead from the studio's perspective on our project is now the senior executive VP of development. So we're very well placed with fans living in the studio. The core part of the pitch, a couple of key points, but the point that I think answers your question is that unlike a lot of work in the fantasy genre, this isn't the thing that I really don't like about fantasy is I dislike fantasy that is all make believe. I don't like well, you got fairies and elves and you got wizards that cast magic, and it just comes out of thin air. I don't like that, and the reason that I like Robert Jordan's world is that it's a world of possibility. It's a world of fantasy built on a foundation of reality or our future reality. It's a world of fantasy built on the crumbled ashes of a future that we've yet to realize. And so it's a world of fantasy built on the foundation of science fiction. And nowhere is it done. I think one of the most poignant and the most dramatic pieces of Jordan's writing in the entire series that I have to put right at the top of my list is that prologue. It means everything to understanding what happens next. If you don't understand, and this is probably exactly what I said last year, if you don't understand, the heights to which mankind will rise over the next few thousand years,
can't know what they've
technology and one power, are merged in day-to-day life. As Melissa says, you'll never realize what has been lost, and you'll never realize what the future holds for Rand and what perils face him. So that prologue, I think, is the most important part of the picture, and I've been very happy to say that my counterpart at the studio absolutely concurs and believes that too.
Besides, how in the world would you describe why everyone's calling him Liz Theron if you don't have a prologue?
Question?
I doubt that they will make 14 movies. Have you guys had some initial discussion on what would be pared down to and what would be removed?
Cut out prologue.
Yeah, it is. What did he say? At a high level, in fact, Jason was even helpful to kind of outline some of that. But I'll tell you, nobody's thinking that. This is one movie project, and we got to knock the ball out of the park. And we also, as I said earlier, need to be absolutely careful about not breaking any threads of continuity. We want to keep everything open for a second picture and beyond. My personal view is that, yeah, after you get through the first 3 or 4 books, there's ample opportunities to do some consolidation, but that is just not at all on the radar screen right now. The whole focus is in getting first picture out that lives up to the brand, that brings in a whole new audience, and that at the same time doesn't let the people in this room down.
It's a great comparison for this one. It's not so much Lord of the Rings, which was conceived as a 3-project film, but Harry Potter. The first one was made as a standalone. And then the same thing, not breaking the continuity. And then it brought in so much money. And as we know by seeing Friday the 13th, the 14th, and all of that, if it makes money, they want more of it. So.
We have about 10 minutes left, so we're going to come back to movies in just a second, but I want to make sure that we cover all the content that was promised in that schedule. And one of the things that we said that we were going to discuss is the outriggers. We don't have Harriet, but Jason, if you can just...
So what has been said, the short version is that we're going to need to wait a little while to find out about that. So there are the Outrigger novels, which we really don't know what those plots are. Rob Jordan had an idea for them. And then there are the 2 remaining prequel novels that Wilson's chuckling, you probably know. And there's the prequel novels, which obviously New Spring was the first one. The second one was about Tam Althor and what he did, leading up, what he did in his life and how it culminated with finding Baby Rand. And then the third movie was, third book. Got to get off movies for a minute. The third prequel novel was all about Moraine and Land, how they managed to get to the New Rivers, as Jim has said, just in the nick of time. So. Those were the, so ultimately there are 5 novels in the Wheel of Time world that Robert Jordan had ideas for. I do not know the extent of the notes, that has not been publicized. Actually, Brandon says that he doesn't even know really how much notes there are for it. Maybe Wilson knows, but at this point, it's beside the point. What's important is that ultimately it comes down to it's Harriet's decision. And Tor, I know, would like to see those books, and as do a lot of fans, right? We all like to read it. Brandon has said that he has said publicly that if Harriet does decide to make that she would like these books done, that he will write them, and that he wants it to be consistent with the voice. And that seems to be the best decision. It all comes down to Harriet, and at the end after A Memory of Light is published, she'll make that decision. And she's here, so if you feel passionately either way, feel free to let her know. So that's pretty much where it is. So we'll have to wait a little while, I think, on that. I hope beyond those 5, I hope that's it. And at that point, kind of becomes fan fiction, in my opinion. But
I am really looking forward to the comprehensive encyclopedia.
That's the Codex. We actually have a panel on that tomorrow too. So one of the other works that will expand the series is what at least I call the Codex, which is the master encyclopedia that Harriet will be really focusing a lot of her time on after the completion of the series with Maria and Alan and others. And so that's more details on that tomorrow at 1. And hopefully we're going to still have time for a couple more questions. One thing that I want to make sure that we at least mention, even though it might be a read and find out or really a watch and find out, one of the largest areas of discussion among the fans, either in many different forms, is potential casting. So, would you like to?
I'd like to
I actually did a posting some time ago on that, and too early for any casting to be made. But the likelihood of this is that you'll cast a series of set of unknown actors and actresses that most people have never heard of. That hopefully will be younger than the ages they'll portray, that could grow into the roles, and a few very seasoned, recognizable character actors to play some of the supporting roles. Liang and Tom might be canvas for that, but way too early to make any decisions.
But that's a great decision because you're not having people coming in to be themselves. You're putting a fresh face so that they can keep up.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen great land fears and Marines, but the problem about going to a top talent, first of all, it's just expense, which doesn't necessarily
But they come with a lot of baggage. Then it's Angelina Jolie and not Moiraine.
Well, the screenwriter who had the project spent 6 months of his life doing the sequel to Wanted, just to find that Angelina Jolie decided she didn't want to do the sequel, and now it's in the trash heap, and he's starting over on another version, reboot it with another actor. You become hostage to your talent at that point, and what you want to do, what typically has happened with Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, what we've heard of Elijah Wood, or Viggo Mortensen. And so there's so much talent out there that this isn't going to be a film that needs to be driven by a name on the marquee. It ought to be a film that's driven by the story, by the genre, and that's ought to be what gets people, and by word of mouth of people like you that bring people into the theater.
I have one point that I'd like to make to talk about just other things that are coming up. Lord of the Rings, 3 books. Yes, we've got the Silmarillion, we've got the Unfinished Tales and things, but that fandom is still very strong, and there are still things that are being done creatively and artistically that have kept that franchise quite strong. And I think we're going to see the same thing here. You're going to still have web communities. You're still going to have people wanting to make comic books. You're still going to have people wanting to make films or other projects or making music based off of this. So I think that we have a very, very large wealth coming to us still from this series because it's such a vibrant world. Clearly all of us moved enough by it to pay $60 to come here. So it's going to be around. I'm not worried that I'm going to get no new members. It's going to stick. Yes.
Go right here first and go over there and come up.
Just wondering, you mentioned a little bit ago about what a mistake it was to have a screenwriter just kind of go off for X number of months and then come back. Can you, if there's no contractual things with that, give us an idea of what sort of changes they were making to the story?
I think I hinted at some. Point of view changes. And again, we're at the point right now where we're working with the studio right now. The senior executive at the studio, and then the former screenwriter we had on the project that is now working in a creative capacity, and myself working with Jason's help. We're basically trying to put together an outline. And so
what you're saying is a WAFO.
Yeah, well, but I can provide probably a little bit more answer to that. And it's one of the things that, I think I alluded to the fact that, points of view that might be different, character emphases.
What I mean more of is script ideas that might have been abandoned somewhere else along the project.
Sure. So, I won't get into specifics, but because there is contract kind of things involved, NDAs and whatnot. But here's a great example. Larry mentioned earlier, an interest in getting more Aes Sedai culture in the movie. So imagine you've got Eye of the World. Eye of the World has Moiraine. You see one blue Ajah, and you see a light at one point, and that's pretty much it, right? There's not a whole lot of Aes Sedai culture. There's no dynamic between the Ajahs or whatever. So I'll say the order is not that blunt. These guys are on the same team as us, but the request comes from the studio of hey, we know that there's a huge demographic out there that would really like this whole Aes Sedai culture. We want this movie we want to put our best stuff forward. So what can we do to get more Aes Sedai culture? Well, we have one extreme where some people say send Rand and all them to Tar Valon and all this stuff, and you're like, oh my God, what are they doing to my book, And then where we have been big advocates of, and where it's been very successful. And again, the success. This is the sort of thing that that Red Eagle has proven that they are on the right side, in my opinion. Is that say, well, instead of having the Hunt for the Black Ajah in the first movie, and instead of Rand being taken in collared chains to Tarvalon, you know, or whatever. You know, you've never been there in the whole series, and there's probably a reason for that. It's one of the questions I have for Brandon. And you know, so let's not force that. So let's find a creative way to bring in some Aes Sedai that is still true to the book. Can't tell you what it is,
But it's good.
but it's good.
It's a good
a great
idea.
idea. And so so what we're doing, you're still going to see the same journey. That's in the Eye of the World. You're still going to
It's a
see
great idea.
more.
It's not just a good, it's a
You're
great
going to see more. You're still going to see a lot of, you know, all the kind of things that you would expect to see. But there are ways that you can cleverly, with the right people and with the right creative minds and the right brainstorming sessions. These things don't come out of a vacuum, as Leia was saying. It isn't that, you know, some clever person went off and sat down and wrote it out and came up with it. We're not all Robert Jordan. You know, so we literally have these calls and these meetings where we sit around and we talk about this stuff. We're like, how can we do this that is true to the book? And we always come back to the book. How is it true to the story, true to the characters? And if necessary, if we are going to invent stuff, can we borrow from later books, or at least the concept behind later books, and bring that in? That's what they did in Lord of the Rings. A lot of the lines of dialogue in the first movie came from the third books and stuff. And so, you know, rule 1 is stick to what is there. Rule 2 is try to borrow from, you know, what is in the expanded books or whatever. And only if we really, really, really need to, and if it supports the core story, do we invent something. And even then, you know, that's always the last resort. So.
Before we end, can I add something to what you were doing?
Sure.
The question before was whether they're going to be the outriggers. Okay. To address it slightly from a family standpoint. The only reason we're here is because Harriet wanted to go forward. And why did Harriet want to go forward? Jim, and you may have heard him on numerous occasions, I did, he made me swear on a stack of Bibles that if somebody tried to finish this work and he wasn't there to do it, I had to kill him. Okay? You know, and he would come back and haunt me if I didn't. We did this over fishing. No one's going to finish this work but me. 2 weeks before he died, sitting in the parlor, he scared the hell out of me because I knew where he was and I knew how tough the fight was, but he said, who do you think can finish this? This is not a question I needed coming out of Jim, okay? Because I knew he was throwing up his last defense at that point. So we had never discussed who was going to do it until then. So now that he's gone, Harriet could let it go. She didn't need to do this. Absolutely did not need to do this. She had just lost the love of her life, guys. Okay. But we felt an obligation to him to finish it because he said, "Who do you think can finish it?" He did not want to leave it unfinished. He felt an obligation to you guys because he wrote the stuff. You read it. The more you read it, the more he wrote. Okay, and he loved doing that for you. But there was no reason, no financial reason. There was no moral obligation to finish it at that point, except that Jim had asked us to do it. Quite literally, I could have given you one more blog entry and told you the last scene. That could have been the end of it. Yes, I do know the last scene. Okay. But, all right, she wanted to finish it. Now, all right, Lord love you all, because it became therapy, shall we say. I've never seen her happier. Okay? And I thank you all for that. But where it'll go after 3 books, if she's still happy and she's still doing it, all I'll say is if she's happy, she may continue on this. And again, I've never seen her happier. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's great to hear.
I think that's it.
I'd just like to add one more thing. Please, if you have any other questions, you need to ask now. Tag me in the hallways or tomorrow. I'm here really to talk to as many of you as I can. I'm a serial lurker. Actually, I'm a member of Theoryland. My ID there is Alan Mondragon. On Dragon, on Tarvalon, and on Dragon Mount. I'm there all the time, but I really look to find ideas, thoughts, suggestions, and even criticisms. So, please post your ideas, and I'll listen.